Yo, what's going on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today at the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens look like they will be very busy ahead of this year's trade deadline. They've got their new management team in place with Kent Hughes. So what is next for Les Habitants? So we'll be going into that today. So some of these reports aren't really anything too new. We've heard a lot of this, especially you hardcore Habs fans. But we're going to go over some little new things and my thoughts on them. So one of the names we've been hearing a lot about in Montreal is Ben Chiarot. So this is from Kevin Allen. Ben Chiarot may fetch. We're hearing this price tag from a lot of teams. How many of these teams will actually get a first-round pick? We don't know. But Ben Chiarot may fetch a first-round pick and another asset in a trade. Ben Chiarot obviously was a big part of the Habs' success in 2021 on their Stanley Cup final run, and I think he will go for a pretty close to that price tag. Big defenseman, really good skater, and I think that's the kind of defenseman a lot of playoff contending teams will look to add. That grit, that size, and skating ability all put into one is kind of the perfect player that teams are going to be going after. I think Ben Chiarot, of all those teams looking to acquire first-round picks for their defensemen, I think Ben Chiarot will be one of the higher price tags in that regard and one of the most highly sought-after guys at the deadline. And that's followed up pretty clearly here from Elliot Friedman. The Blues, Panthers, Leafs, and Flames may be sniffing around on the Canadiens defenseman Ben Chiarot. Again, all those teams looking to add some grit, some size, and quite frankly, some playoff experience. I think there's no real surprise to that. And there you go. You kind of have your situation there. Following that up here with Ben Chiarot, this is also from Elliot Friedman. I think there's a lot of interest in Ben Chiarot. I think they've had teams already engaging the Canadiens like St. Louis, Florida, and potentially someone like Calgary. We already kind of heard that. Now, one of the big names, and he's actually in the marquee, the title of this video, Artturi Lehkonen. He is a pending unrestricted free agent. And this is from Frank Saravelli. Artturi Lehkonen is the most in-demand player on the trade market in Montreal. And a lot of people are comparing him to the Blake Coleman of the Tampa Bay Lightning trade a couple years back. Very similar comparisons. One of the most dominant players in the bottom six you can acquire. Is it a little overhyped? Maybe so. But I think a lot of teams are clamoring for Artturi Lehkonen. And this is also from Frank Saravelli. There are at least 3 teams begging the Canadiens to trade Artturi Lehkonen. So there's another pretty big report there. And then following that up from David Pagnotta, some of those teams, quite interestingly enough, there's 3 of them. Are these the 3 teams begging for Lehkonen? The Rangers, Wild, and Flames are reportedly interested, or maybe begging on their knees, for Artturi Lehkonen. I think Lehkonen is a really good addition. And again, he fits the mold of what those teams are looking to add. You know, the Flames, Wild, and Rangers are all looking to add a scoring touch with that grit. He can skate. He can fit on the penalty kill. I mean, he could kind of do it all. And I think he could really round out one of those teams. And could be the needle that puts them over the edge to the next level. I think Artturi Lehkonen will definitely be a hot, high in-demand commodity come deadline day, if he's not already traded before then. So this is where we heard that kind of comparison to Blake Coleman, also from Frank Saravelli. The player that I believe is most in demand from the Montreal Canadiens is Artturi Lehkonen. Teams see him as this year's version of Blake Coleman. That's the guy teams are really after to get. And I think that is kind of where things are at for Lehkonen. A guy that is just very versatile, great in his own end, can score goals, a little bit chippy. All the intangibles that teams look for in a player, that is the definition of Artturi Lehkonen. Now, following that up, this is from David Pagnotta, a name we haven't heard much about, but it's a Quebec native, and he may be on his way out of Montreal. The Predators are among the teams believed to be linked to forward Jonathan Drouin. Jonathan Drouin was a high-end draft pick. When he came to the Tampa Bay Lightning, he obviously held out. He requested a trade out of Tampa. ultimately got that trade out of Tampa to Montreal. Sergachev for Drouin. We've seen how that's worked out. The Lightning have won 2 cups. The Habs have not, to say the least, right? So Jonathan Drouin, I think that era is over. That chapter will be complete as he is on the final year of his contract. He could be a nice scoring depth addition to a team. I mean, the problem with Drouin is you can't put him in your top 6 because he doesn't score enough goals. And you can't put him in your bottom 6 because he's not aggressive or defensively oriented enough to be down there. And that's kind of the problem with Drouin. That's what happens with a lot of these players. They can't adapt. A guy that's a really good, if you're expected to be a top 6 forward and you can't get the production there, you have to be gritty enough and tough enough in the corners and in front of the net. Drouin just isn't that player. He is based purely on skill, and he doesn't necessarily have that touch. So I could see him going for maybe a second, maybe a third round pick at the deadline at best. But I just don't think Drouin has the value to garner a first round pick. And I just think there are better options available for teams already. And we are still, a couple months from the deadline. I think already other teams will be looking at other guys that are available. Now, this is an interesting report. And this is on another defenseman that could be available in Montreal. So this is from Jimmy Murphy. There appear to be teams with interest in Canadiens defenseman Jeff Petry. Jeff Petry has been injured a little bit here over the past 2 years. That's been kind of his biggest hindrance. But as the Canadiens look to rebuild their defense, Jeff Petry could be one of those guys on the way out. Again, kind of like Ben Chiarot, a huge piece of their success in 2021, going to the Stanley Cup final. So I wonder what the price for Petry is. Is that a first-round pick? Maybe 2 first-round picks? Maybe that's a little bit much. Maybe it's something more along the lines of a first-round pick and a prospect. But I think Jeff Petry could be in high demand. And if a team's looking to add some defense, Vancouver, I could see that working out. The Oilers could be another team in there. I think there's going to be a couple of suitors in the summer. Again, this seems like a deal that could get done closer to the summer. I think the Habs are going to look at who's interested toward the deadline and then kind of try and get a deal done over the summer. I think that's what we're looking at here for the Habs in terms of a Jeff Petry trade. So don't hold your breath here for a Petry trade, but that is going to be on the table and something that maybe surprises people at the deadline if somebody's willing to garner up the assets and they really like Jeff Petry enough. So that is it for today's video. Guys, if you want to know the latest news around the NHL in terms of the rumor mill here ahead of the trade deadline, make sure you are subscribed to get the latest news in the trade rumor mill. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.